When I was 19 years old, I still lived at home with my parents and little brother. They were going out of town for some weekend getaway trip, but I was at that angsty stage where I only wanted to do my own thing, even if that meant foregoing a legitimate good time. The truth was that I was incredibly hungover. I was early on in my drinking career and had a long night of boozing the night before. I felt so sick that all I wanted to do was lay down and just be alone. Definitely didn't have the stomach to be with my family for 72 hours straight. I coughed up some excuse and they left me behind. You might ask yourself what I had planned for this epic little weekend. No house parties, no spin the bottle, no drugs or music. The first thing I did was cut all my hair. This was around the time Britney Spears shaved her head and was on every news station in America. Low-key thought it was kind of badass to just go against what everyone thought about you. I was getting ready to ship off to college at the time, so the notion of a self-reinvention was very exciting. Chopping off my hair seemed to be the quickest, most convenient route of rebellion. After the impromptu haircut, I went to the bathroom for a mini spa afternoon. Face masks, moisturizers, and I even cranked up the shower to make it all steamy. After an hour of lounging in the bathroom and getting all the hair cleaned up, I stepped out into the hallway naked as the day I was born. Moving naked through the house is a prized pastime for many homebodies, and I was no exception. I went into the kitchen to find a snack and just kind of zoned out as I looked out the window. I glanced down to the bag I'm eating out of, and I see a note on the counter. That's weird, I think. I don't remember my parents leaving me a note. At first glance, I recognize right away that it's not any handwriting I know. It reads, "I was going to leave you a letter, but I see that you're still here." My blood runs cold. Still here. Who the hell wrote this? I can feel the water dripping down my back, reminding me of just how vulnerable I am. It's the middle of the day and still, I'm worse off than a sitting duck. There's a creak down the hallway. I make the split decision and barrel towards my bedroom. I can't do anything without clothes. I'd rather get murdered than run onto the street naked. There's someone standing there, though. Enter the room and find a man, tall, dark clothing with greasy hair hanging in his face. The moment I step into the room, he cracks this broad smile, and it's the creepiest thing I've ever seen. The only thing I can do is scream bloody murder right at the top of my lungs. His smile fades and he takes a step towards me, almost apologetically. That's when I recognize him. This weird guy that I dated my freshman year. We were an item for about 3 weeks before he ran away from home, and I mean ran away. No one saw or heard from him for months. The actual local myth was that he'd been found one city over and was homeschooled now. Regardless, here he stood, grinning in my bedroom. He reached behind himself, grabbed my clothes off the bed, and then hands them to me. I proceeded to dress myself in the most awkward situation I can possibly imagine. He didn't even act like he was doing anything wrong, which was creepy, but also a comfort, kind of like a little kid or something. He makes me sit down on the bed after I get dressed. Honestly, he didn't do anything weird or violent. He didn't threaten or hurt me, other than breaking into my house. He heard I was moving away and wanted to see me before I left. He said he'd been thinking about the past a lot, and that freshman year was his favorite. We didn't date long, but it held a special memory for him. We talked for a couple of hours, and then he left. Never saw him again. But I did hear a couple of years later that he was fully institutionalized for schizophrenia. That definitely added up when everything was said and done, but made me feel a little uneasy after the fact. How long was he in my house without me knowing that day? And worse than that, could he have possibly hurt me? Lock your doors when you stay home alone. I live in a small country where things still go bump in the night, and that doesn't go for just local legends, dark strangers, cartels. I think you get the idea. Where I live, nowhere is truly removed from the day-to-day dangers of the unknown. It was a dark night. I found myself home alone. Here, it isn't uncommon for the entire family to live together. Grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren will all share a growing piece of property for wealth and security. It's the simplest way to live. But as you can imagine, being home alone is a rarity. With so many people under one roof, it's almost impossible to time anything just right to ever be actually alone. So I did what I always do. I hooked up the surround sound throughout the living room and turned out all the lights. I bundled up on the couch with my favorite snack and watched whatever I desired on the big family television. Despite the ever-present danger I mentioned earlier, remember the evening being quite relaxing. Rain and a breeze moved in along the coast and created a pitter-patter against the roof. As the night went on, I thought I heard someone at the front door. As I moved to investigate, the sound and movement stopped. But being the stormy night and that I had the sound up so loud, I truly in my heart believed I'd simply heard something that wasn't there. I turned back to the movie and did my best to relax. That's when the back door began to rattle. Just myself on the sofa to get a better look. When someone starts to knock. A frantic heavy banging against the hardwood. I froze in place. Whatever I dismissed as storm sounds, or maybe just the junk blowing around in the backyard, is now undeniable. There's someone trying to come inside the house. Everyone who lives there naturally has a key. Whoever is outside the door clearly does not. At the time, I'm an 18-year-old man. I'm running through the logical scenarios in my head. Whoever this is, they tried to open up the front door, then slip around the side of the house, and is now trying to force the back door open. This isn't cartel or a monster. Anything with real bloodlust would have forced the front door open. I reasoned that it's a common thief, probably someone very nervous and trying to remain unseen. Being 18, I decide to take them head on and show the world this asshole picked the wrong house. I move from the couch to the kitchen, grab the biggest cleaver I can find, 10 inches of dingy, ugly steel. Still, the door handle is twisting back and forth. Go time. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm down for whatever. There's nothing like the mentality of a teenager. You don't know who you're messing with. I shouted through the door. The stranger on the other side stopped shaking the handle for a moment. I know you're out there. You have 3 seconds to get the fuck out of here, or I'll cut you up. They didn't care. The knocking started again, even harder than before. My confidence quickly faded. I took a deep breath and readied myself. In my head, this was do or die. Hoisting the cleaver over my head, I unfastened the bolt and threw open the door before me. It wasn't a burglar or a gangster of any kind. It was my sweet little grandma. She stood there soaking wet with an expression of agitation, but also unmistakable terror. "What are you doing?" she shouted at me. "Me? What are you doing at the back door?" I asked. "Thought you were an intruder." No, she laughed as she stepped inside the house. Went and paused the television while she shed her coats by the door. She explained that she'd gotten home during the storm, tried knocking for a while. That was the noise I heard at the front door. I guess she knocked for quite a while because she finally gave up and decided to try the back door. The front entrance has a little cover, so she figured that even if it were locked, at least she would be out of the rain. That's when I started to hear the commotion and decided to go to war with whatever was outside. Glad I didn't though, because I seriously almost killed my grandma. I played softball throughout high school. This meant I got home an hour or two later than school actually let out. Regardless, I was still the first one home more often than not. My parents worked well into the afternoon, and my sister participated in various clubs and after-school events like theater club. I got home one day to the usual scene. Fully locked house. Lights are off. Note from my mom in the kitchen. I let my dog out in the backyard, changed out of my uniform, and opened up a bag of Cheetos. Very average, very typical day. My dog scratched to let me know he was bored and to let him inside. Dog and I cuddle on the couch and start watching our favorite shows. Out of nowhere, I hear a door slam open. It's beneath me, downstairs in the basement. I could feel it vibrate through the floorboards. I know this sounds weird, but this wasn't out of the ordinary. The basement was like a downstairs apartment. My older sister lived down there. The basement had its own entry door to the outside, and she could be pretty careless with her coming and going. Our parents had spoken to her multiple times about letting the door slam open and closed. So honestly, I didn't think twice about it. I kept watching TV and eating my Cheetos. My dog, however, got up and moseyed down the stairs. Again, this wasn't odd, but what was odd was the silence that followed. No smooching or petting, no excited cheers. The dog went downstairs, and that was that. Still, I continued watching TV. Maybe she was just in a bad mood down there. After a few minutes, I see movement in the front yard. I turned to find my dog, the one that was just with me on the couch, running up and down the block. He's a big, dumb, and overly friendly Labrador who is not allowed out front. My sister definitely knows this, so I'm thinking, what the hell is she doing? I get off the couch and go down to the basement stairwell. The lights are off. It's eerily quiet. I'm starting to feel all the things that are out of place, the peculiar things that I should have noticed earlier. I reach the basement landing and see the door wide open to the outside world. There's mud tracked in a few steps and a boot print placed squarely in the center of the door. Zinnier, I can tell somebody kicked that ground-level door in for whatever reason. Robbery, rape, murder, the list really only gets worse. Once they heard the television upstairs and the dog coming down to check the bottom floor, they must have gone back out the way they came and left the door wide open. I told everyone what happened when they got home. They searched the house and the property, but nothing turned up. So my parents got a security system a few weeks later. That was the only reason I ever felt safe inside that house ever again. I live in a pretty rural area outside of your average middle America town. It was my night off, and I decided to just hang around the house myself. I got some things done around the yard, did a little self-care, and then settled in with dinner and a movie for the evening. I like to be low energy every now and again, but still I have the tendencies of a night owl. The movie turned into a TV show, and soon it was well past midnight. I hunker down with my phone and a blanket and let the night really begin. Just as I'm zoning out, someone starts pounding on my front door. Not a knock, but a full-force blow against the wood. I freeze for a moment, but then I make the easy assumption it's my boyfriend coming over for a booty call. This was common behavior for him, and one of the reasons I did like staying up late. I barely had to stand up from the couch to be able to see through the small glass window in the front door. Now, I really do freeze. My heart is the only thing I can feel in motion, steadily slamming up my throat. Staring back at me through the pane was not my boyfriend, an older bearded stranger. It was the most unfamiliar face I'd ever seen. This little window in the door was weird because if you were up close and trying to look through it, the prismatic glass skewed the optics, made it impossible to know what you were looking at. You had to have some distance between yourself and the window, like I had right now, to make out what was actually on the other side. This guy was looking at me, but I knew he couldn't see me. I snuck back down the hallway and hid in the doorway of my bedroom. I was scared, but I would have been way more scared if I didn't have an eye on him. I couldn't imagine how I'd feel if I turned my back for 1 second and lost track of him. Remember when I said I live rural? Well, I also live in a cellular dead zone. I didn't even bother to find the damn thing. Instead, I stepped to my bedside and fished the landline from my table. I hit the dial button and brung the receiver to my ear. It's completely dead in my hand. The guy hammers on the door, this time screaming at the top of his lungs. I'm in, he slurs. My blood runs cold. This is now worse than a horror movie. I start running through what few options are available to me. No phone, no way to get to the car, no one coming to get me. I have to stay inside where it's safe. That's the only thing that makes sense. First, I sneak into the kitchen and slide the chef knife out of the block. It's the only weapon in the whole house. Next, I slink into the bathroom across from my bedroom and lock the door. It's just a weak little handle lock, but it's enough to buy me some time if he actually breaks through the front door. For some reason, the idea of keeping the high ground was pulsing through my mind. It was literally all I could think about, or I barricaded myself in the bathroom. So I climbed up onto the countertop and crouched above the door. If he broke in, I'd be able to jump on his back and stab him in the neck and shoulders. I was terrified of the whole thing, but I do have to admit, I was very pleased with my whole little assault strategy. In my head, it made the most sense. With a knife in hand, all I had to do was sink it home. Time went by. That guy just keeps yelling, "Hey, let me in." Now he was moving around the house. I could hear his hand dragging along the siding as he walked from end to end. He checked each and every window, yanking on the frame, pushing on the glass. Thankfully, I kept them all locked, as well as both doors. I could hear his frustration, and he took to wailing on the walls again, demanding I let him inside. Something occurred to me. That handset I fished out from my bedside table was dead. This psycho didn't cut the line. I just didn't charge the phone. There was a second one down the hall in the kitchen. Nervously, I climbed down from my perch on the countertop and waited until I heard the guy on the opposite side of the house. I locked the door and bolted for the phone, which was exactly where I thought it'd be, sitting in the cradle by the back door. I snagged it and retreated back to the bathroom. I called 911, and they dispatched a few officers, but were totally transparent when they told me it'd take at least 15 minutes for them to get there. I was on my own and needed to stay frosty until they arrived. I stayed on the line until the cops arrived. They could hear the guy pulling and kicking at doors, screaming for me to open it. The longest 15 minutes of my life. When they arrived, they apprehended the man immediately. Dispatch confirmed that I could exit the house, where I stepped out to find a whole team of cops standing around one dirty, scruffy, drunk off his ass, hippie-looking kid. He was cuffed, sitting on the ground, totally confused about the situation. He clearly wasn't a murderer. There was a party down the road. This kid stumbled off to take a piss or something, got lost in the dark, and thought my house was the spot. He convinced himself that everyone had locked the doors and was hiding somewhere. It turned out to be a big misunderstanding, but still, it was absolutely terrifying. To this day, nothing compares to what I felt that night. Remember to keep your phones charged and at the ready. Years ago, I moved into an older apartment. It was pretty cheap and the building only had 8 units in it. There were 4 on the ground floor and 4 up above it, all of them opening up to the outside. It was really all that I could afford, or else there was no way that I would have moved in there. The rent was like $400 a month, and in that location, it was really cheap. The apartment that I had was on the ground level, and at the far end, it had 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a living room, and a kitchen. After moving in, I didn't have a problem with filling up the space with the furniture that I had, and I didn't even have that much stuff. For the first 2 or 3 days, things went fine. I was gone for most of the day at work, and back by nighttime. One night, I went to bed at about 10 o'clock, only to be woken up in the middle of the night. Somebody was knocking on my front door, looked at the clock, and it was midnight. I sat up and turned on a light from my bedroom. Why would anybody be knocking on my door at midnight? I got up out of bed and then walked out into the living room and turned the light on. I could sort of see that there was somebody at the door, but just saw their silhouette. When the light turned on, though, they turned and walked away. I didn't get a good look at them at all. I went over to the door and looked out of it, but by now they were gone, and I didn't see anything. It was kind of weird, but I decided just to go back to bed. I was able to get back to sleep, and I'm not aware of the person coming back that night. Didn't wake up for the rest of the night. The next day was normal. I got up, went to work, and then came back home. That night I fell asleep at the usual time of around 10 p.m., but once more, for the second night in a row, I was woken up in the night. This time, though, I wasn't sure what woke me. I didn't hear anybody knocking on the front door or anything. Turned over to go back to sleep, but I really wasn't that tired. Was wide awake, and I had a bad feeling for some reason. I sat up and turned on my bedroom light. Everything seemed fine to me. I decided to get up and go to the bathroom and then try to fall back asleep, so I got up from my bed and walked over to my bedroom door. The door was closed, and I opened it to my living room and kitchen area. The living room was closest to me, and the kitchen was at the other end. The only light was coming from my bedroom, so it was kind of hard to see anything, but everything appeared to be normal. When I stepped out, though, I heard a noise. It was coming from my kitchen and behind a counter, in an area that was not visible to me. I stopped where I was and looked over to the counter. Now my heart started beating really fast. Had no idea what that could have been. I said, "Is anybody there?" It was dead silent. I didn't hear any noise at all. I had no idea what to do in this situation. It sure seemed like somebody was in there, but I still was not 100% convinced. My eyes were just locked on the counter area where I had heard the noise. Then a few seconds later, suddenly somebody appeared. They stood up from behind the counter and immediately started running towards my front door. It was probably like 15 feet away from them. It was still very dark, and I couldn't see them very well, but I was sure that it was my landlord. He made it to the door, opened it up, and then ran out of my apartment. I really couldn't believe it. I ran over to the door and then locked it, then went into my bedroom and called the police. Told them that my landlord was in my apartment in the middle of the night without permission. They came out and talked to me and said that they were going to talk to the landlord next. I went back to bed and the next day got more information. The landlord admitted to being in my apartment. He also apparently was involved in other illegal activity. As a result, all of us tenants of his building had to move out, and the building went to new ownership. I'm not sure of all the details. All I know is that I had to scramble to find a new place. It was for the best though, because I would much rather live in an apartment without the landlord entering as he chooses. This is something that happened when I was a kid about 13 years old. I lived with my parents and two older siblings, both sisters. I remember that my father got a new job, and we had to move like an hour away. For me, it was exciting, but also kind of sad to leave our old neighborhood, especially at that age. Our new house, I thought, was pretty nice. It was in a neighborhood with lots of other houses, but we had a decent-sized front and backyard. We were not rich, but it had 2 floors and a basement. All 4 of the bedrooms were upstairs, and the main floor had a kitchen, dining room, living room, and family room. There were also a couple of bathrooms and closets. We moved in one day with the help of a moving company, and then spent the next couple of days unpacking boxes and stuff. By the following week, we were all moved in, and it was summertime, so luckily I didn't have school. One night during that same week, I stayed up late playing video games. This is something that I did a lot during that time. Everybody else had gone up to bed, and I was by myself on the main floor and in the family room. I really don't remember exactly what time it was, but probably after midnight is what I would guess. As I was sitting on the floor and playing video games looking at the TV screen, I saw something behind it. We had a window which faced the side of our house behind this particular TV. I saw somebody walk past outside, right by the window. I couldn't tell who it was at all, but it really took me by surprise. At first, I was wondering if I really just saw what I thought I did. Our house wasn't that close to the neighbors on that side that it would be the neighbor. I had a bad feeling about it. It seemed as though whoever it was headed into our backyard. Decided to get up and go look out of one of the back windows inside. I carefully went towards the kitchen, which was at the back end of the house. When I did at first, I didn't see anything. I got up close to the window and looked out into the backyard. Everything seemed normal though. It was pretty dark in the backyard, but I could see most of it. Was wondering who the person was and where they had gone, but I was also glad that I didn't see them back there. After looking out the window for probably like a minute or two, I backed away. Then I headed back into the family room where I was before playing video games. Around the time that I made it back into the room though, I heard a rattling coming from the back door. Somebody was trying to open the back door, leading from the backyard to the kitchen. Instantly, when I heard it, I sprinted up the stairs. Then, I ran all the way to my parents' bedroom. I woke them up and told them that somebody was trying to get in the house. My parents both came downstairs with me. When my dad turned on the light to the backyard, he saw the man running away. Didn't go over there, but I guessed the man was by the house near the other back window and no longer at the back door. He ran out of the yard and through another neighbor's backyard before going out of sight. After the guy ran away, my parents stayed up for a bit, but the guy didn't come back. My dad went outside and saw some marks on the back door. I think the man was trying to get in. I went to bed a short time later and the guy never returned. For the rest of the time that we lived there, no more strange things like that happened either. I still wonder who the guy was and why he tried entering our house. For months, I was afraid that somebody else would try to break in. Luckily, nobody did though.